Chapter 10. What did he do? TJ, my mom said, concerned. Is everything okay? What's wrong, baby? I had rushed into the house and thrown myself around my mother's waist, burying my face into her stomach. Normally, I would be at Marcus's house today, but I told him that I needed to go straight home. I'm sure he didn't know why, but I think the tone of my voice told him that it was important to me. I may be making my mother a bit uncomfortable, but I can't just let her go. I also can't stop crying. Something inside me is hurting, a hurt that I've never felt before. Somewhere inside me is hurting, a place that I didn't even know existed. And ever since this hurt started, it hasn't faded away like other hurts do. This one has stayed right in the center of my chest. I don't know what it is, but I know it's caused it. After sitting down with Victor at the buddy bench and asking him if he was okay, something unexpected happened. His eyes began tearing up. Victor's eyes began to water. And before I knew it, he leaned forward, his hands covering his face, and began to bawl. I didn't know what to do. Anytime I had talked to Victor before this moment, he had responded with sarcasm or some snippy remark. I was prepared to write him out and find out what was wrong, for days if that's what it took. But I was not prepared for this, or for what came after. Oh my goodness, I said, scooting over to sit next to him. What's wrong? Victor didn't answer. Not surprising. What was surprising was that he didn't push me away when I placed my hand on his back. Although he did shrink away a little, he didn't get angry or order me to go away. He just sat there, crying. Come on, I said, standing up. Let's go to the office. I didn't know if it was the right thing to do, but I knew that I had to do something. And normally, when someone was crying, you took them to the office. Victor didn't get up at first. He just sat there, still sobbing. Then I put one hand under his arm and my other hand around his back to help him stand up. He shrank back again when I touched his back, kind of like I do when I get a bad sunburn after we've gone to the beach, but he didn't fight me. After standing up, he kept his hands over his face as I guided him towards the office. It was weird. It was kind of like he trusted me. Victor was trusting me. I didn't think he trusted anyone, except himself, of course. As we entered the office, Mr. Ellis was giving someone an ice pack, which they immediately placed on the back of their head. And remember, just because someone else decides to weave in and out of the swings while people are swinging, doesn't mean it's a good idea, he said in a fatherly tone. And what's the damage here? He asked me as I stood with my arms still around Victor. I'm not sure, I said truthfully. He just started crying. Well, people don't just start crying for no reason, Mr. Ellis commented. I know, I agreed, but I didn't know what else to do, so I brought him here. After unsuccessfully trying to get Victor to talk, I suggested to Mr. Ellis that maybe Victor would be comfortable talking to Mrs. Garrison, the school's intervention aide. He agreed and radioed for her. She was finishing up her lunch, but came as soon as Mr. Ellis called. Good afternoon, Victor, she greeted him. I can see that something has upset you. Would you like to tell me what it is? Once again, Victor didn't answer. He still hadn't even taken his hands away from his face. I can't help you if you don't tell me what's wrong, she said, placing her hand on his shoulder. Once again, he shrank away. Mrs. Garrison immediately removed her hand with a concerned look on her face. How about we go to my office to talk, she offered. That way we can talk in private. Thank you, TJ, for helping Victor up to the office. I'll go ahead and help him from here. After nodding to Mrs. Garrison, I turned around to go back to the playground, but Victor stopped me. He grabbed me by the wrist, removing his hand from his face for the first time since we were at the buddy bench. As I turned around to look at him, he had a I don't want to go alone look on his face. I immediately looked at Mrs. Garrison, unsure of what to do. It's okay, TJ. It seems he wants you to stay with him, she replied as we walked to the office door and held it open for us. As soon as we left the office, Victor covered his face again, so I guided him to Mrs. Garrison's office. For those of you who don't know who Mrs. Garrison is, she is awesome. She is trustworthy, respectful, fair, caring, and kind. She always knows just what to say to calm a person down, and she gives great advice. The best part of all, she's real with you. If what you did was wrong, she'll tell you. But instead of just making you feel bad or guilty, she'll sit with you and help you figure out what better choices you can make next time. Make good choices is basically her motto. She's also a great listener. If you're having a bad day, she'll sit and listen to what you have to say without interrupting you. She doesn't belittle you for making you feel the way for she doesn't belittle you for feeling the way you do. Although she will tell you if you're milking something. You know, like if you struck out during wiffle ball at recess and decided to turn that bad 5 minutes into drama that lasted all day. Right in here, boys, she instructed as we reached her office. After entering the room, Mrs. Garrison motioned for me to sit down on the couch in her room. She grabbed a nearby chair and sat in front of us. Just as she sat down, we could hear Funmaker John blow his whistle to signal that recess was over. So she stood back up and walked to her desk. She picked up her classroom phone and called the office. Hello, Mr. Ellis. This is Mrs. Garrison. Could you please let... She covered the speaker with her hand and whispered to me, Who's your teacher? Mrs. Whiston, I answered. And what about Victor? She asked. Mrs. Whiston, I repeated. She then took her hand off the phone speaker and finished her sentence. Could you please let Mrs. Whiston know that TJ and Victor are with me in my office? Mrs. Garrison asked. Thank you. After hanging up the phone, she came back and sat down in the chair she had placed in front of us. And for the next 15 minutes or so, I learned more about Victor than I had in the past week. I may sound excited, but let's just say that I almost wish I didn't know as much about him as I do now. After getting a hold of Victor's hands and helping him calm down with some breathing exercises, Mrs. Garrison did what she did best. She focused 100% on Victor. She listened, asked the right questions, and offered her support in any way she could. And Victor, well, I think, is glad that he shared. Mi amor, what's wrong? My mom asked as I continued to hug her tightly. Let's go take a seat. Mom shifted my hug to the side of her and walked us to the living room. Then, without letting go, we sat down on the couch. Luckily, Sochi isn't here, or she would be laughing at me and teasing me for crying. Okay, Mom said, gently pulling me away from her. Talk to me. After letting go, Mom used her apron to wipe my eyes and clean my nose. It took me a moment before I was calm enough to speak. Are we better now? She asked. I nodded my head slowly. Okay, tell me what's wrong. Just thinking about what was bothering me almost made me start to cry again. My eyes began to water, but Mom grabbed some tissues from the coffee table and dabbed my eyes before I could start. You're okay. Just talk to me, she said. Why are people so mean? I asked, wanting to know the answer more than anything I had ever wanted to know before. What do you mean, baby? She asked. I mean, how could he do that to Victor? I clarified. Sort of. Who do what? Mom asked. How could Victor's mom's fiance treat him like that? I said, a bit of anger in my voice. Victor? The new kid in your class, Victor? She asked. Yes, I answered. What did Victor's mom's fiance do?